Wilson actually gives us regrets he can't make it here today.
Okay. And I have an addition for in-camera labor after. And any other additions?
I'll move the agenda B.
Ben's moved to accept the amended agenda. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. And we'll do the adoption of the minutes. May 15th, 2018, regular council meeting minutes.
I'll move to adopt those minutes.
Scott has moved. Is there any questions or concerns? All in favor? Carried. And May 15th, 2018, public hearing minutes, bylaw 2017-56 and bylaw 2017-61. Tom has moved to both?
Yes.
Any questions or concerns? All in favor? Carried. With that, we'll move on to public hearings. Just give me a sec here. I move that the process for Wheatland County Council meeting as it pertains to scheduled public hearings will be as followed. Public hearing, first reading if required, consideration for further readings of bylaw for those public hearings that have been closed. Further move that the above process will take place with the absence of resolutions to go into and out of council before and after each public hearing. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. And with that, I will open the public hearing for bylaw 2016-59. Good morning.
All right. Good morning, Council.
Has the proper notifications been done?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, they have.
And is there any member present that has any conditions that any of the council members should listen to this public hearing? Not seeing any. Please continue.
Thank you. So I have an RFD to close the public hearing for bylaw 2016-59. Previously, on June 20th, 2017, a public hearing was opened for bylaw 2016-59 to propose a redesignation of 3.22 acres from agricultural general to country residential. It is adjacent to Range Road 225 and approximately 4.6 kilometers southwest of the village of Standard. So the reason being is that the applicant of this particular redesignation file has requested to cancel the redesignation. They no longer want to pursue it. And at the time on June 20th, it was recessed, the public hearing, in order to gather more information, particularly to do a wetland assessment. At this time, the wetland assessment was not pursued by the applicant. And then, as I mentioned previously, since then, the applicant has expressed interest in closing the application. Therefore, the recommendation to council is to close the public hearing for bylaw 2016-59. Option 1, staff proposes that option 1 be recommended for council's consideration. And I'm just going to scroll. Okay, so these are your options at this time. Option 1 is to close the public hearing. Option 2 is that council reopen the public hearing. Option 3 is that council provide an alternative recommendation. Thank you.
Well, the public hearing is open. So, but what I'm hearing is the applicant does not want to pursue this anymore.
That's correct. So I've received email confirmation from them that they would like to close it.
Okay, so our option would be, I'm thinking, I could close the public hearing and then we can have a motion to rescind the bylaw.
That's correct. So with the closing of the public hearing, the next part of it would be to request the first reading be rescinded for this particular bylaw.
Okay. Is there any questions? Any questions from the public? Not seeing any. I'll close the public hearing for bylaw 2016-59, and we're now back in council.
I'll move that first reading of bylaw 2016-59 be rescinded.
Okay, any questions? All in favor? Carried. And with that, I'll open the public hearing for bylaw 2017-48. The proper notification's been done.
Through the chair, yes, I have.
Is there any member of the public have any issues with any counselor listening to this public hearing? Not seeing any, please continue.
Thank you. So this is a public hearing for bylaw 2017-48 for a redesignation. The intent is to redesignate 3.2 acres from agricultural general to country residential district, plan number 041-3795, lot 1, block 3, within the Southwest 62526. The recommendation from staff is that council undertake the public hearing for bylaw 2017-48. The intent of the application is to separate the existing homestead from the parent parcel, which is currently cultivated. There is an existing, that might be, I apologize. So it says there's an existing dwelling and farm building. However, that is incorrect. It is bare land parcel, so my apologies. There is currently bare land with no permanent structures on the area intended for redesignation. With that, we have some of the relevant policy and legislation. At this time, staff is recommending refusal for the application based off of the statutory documents and guiding documents for the county for the reasons stated here. Thank you.
Any questions? Any questions from public? Comments? Sure, yes, you can. Please come up to the podium. And I guess I turn the mic on for him. And state your name, please.
Tony Gregov Properties. So I'm the owner applicant of this one. It's a 3-acre parcel that's a part of a 15-acre parcel. And if we're 16 or so, and if you look at it on a map, it's actually fragmented by the rail line. So it's difficult to get to in terms of farming. It's not contiguous with the quarter section because it's on the north side of the rail line. So I've had some challenges even renting it out and stuff. You know, in terms of farming, that corner that we're talking about cutting out, it was brought up in first reading that's challenging to farm. That's a reality in terms of the big seeding equipment spraying. So net loss in terms of agricultural land would probably be less than 2 acres. So that's just something to keep into consideration. In terms of other aspects of what we've done to date, there is a water well on site. We've tested the water well. From a suitability perspective, it's suitable. Quality of water is good, and then also we have the volume there. That water well is on the 3 acres currently, and one of my other concerns is that with the large implements and stuff, that water well could be struck by larger equipment. So just another kind of consideration. We have, you know, well marked off, you know, with a barrel and painted and all that stuff. So hopefully it doesn't get hit with the big implements and stuff. In terms of septic evaluation, it's suitable. So we've gone through all the tests there. Everything is suitable for septic. So water's suitable, septic's suitable. And that's all been reviewed by an independent engineer on the behalf of the county. So just keep that in mind as everything is, you know, approved from that perspective. In terms of additional fragmentation on this 16 acres, we already are at the 4, I think, depending on how you look at it. So Odessa can confirm that. So with this 3-acre piece coming out, if it was accepted, there would never, well, it'd be very challenging to ever fragment this piece further. So keep that in mind in, you know, in the whole context of this application, is it's not like there's going to be another application on the heels of this one, because you'd have to go through the whole approval process of having, water brought to the location, on-site septic systems and everything like that. So really, this is a last time out if this application is approved. So kind of in summary, I'm obviously the applicant and proponent of this application and think it makes a lot of sense. Another thing that would be desirable for me is if it was approved is, the farmland, the 15 acres that would be left behind, that could be assembled to at the other farmland down the road. So in terms of, overall sustainability and stuff, I think this application makes sense because, one, there's the net loss is maybe 2 acres, maybe less. There's the water well to keep into consideration. And then there's an opportunity to potentially move that 15 acres into what it should be, which is more in the farmland designation. Anyway, thank you for listening to my kind of questions or my comments here today. If you guys have any questions for me, I don't know if that's acceptable, but.
I'll ask. Any
Sure.
questions?
I'm just curious, you mentioned there's a well on site. Why is there one there? Is there
So kind of a long story. The water well came with the property, and this property came to me through foreclosure. So we lent some money to a developer, and we never intended on owning this property, but we're in a situation where now we're in care and custody of the property and looking at options to deal with it. So the water well was on property. It has been drilled previously, so there have been wells. We actually, when we did the testing on that well that's there, the previous landowner, which we're still in, or the guy that we lent the money to, we're still in good terms with him. He came out to the property and he thought one of the wells was actually struck by a farming implement. And the good news is we dug it up. We actually pin found it, which is like a metal detector. With the engineer that was on site, we found it, and it looks like it was cut and capped properly. So not really sure the full history of why the well's there, but there is definitely a water well there.
Any other questions? Thanks for coming up.
Thanks.
Any other questions from the public? Council?
Just a
Dan?
question to staff. Across the tracks that shows, is there another subdivision right across the tracks from that?
That property there that's. Oh, yeah, you're correct. Yeah, so the right of way for the rail line goes across it, and then it looks like there is lot. Sorry. My apologies, I didn't have the microphone on. So yes, that is correct. There is a Lot 2, Block 3 in the southwest quarter already. And with the rail line there, looks like it was subdivided previously, and then this would be 1, 2, 3. This would be, if this is approved and then further subdivided, it would be the 4th parcel in the quarter section.
Thank you.
Question for staff. Under the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, I noticed that we're talking about Water for Life program, and it says new residential development should focus on areas where there's a regional water line exists. Does not that mean that every subdivision we are going to do on the west side of the county can now be sort of the kibosh put on it because we do not have a regional water line? We may be able to negotiate a regional water line in the next 3 or 4 years, but we do not have one now. So would that not affect everything that's theoretically that could be used on everything that isn't somewhere near Rocky Ford?
Through the chair, if I understand. Yes, so with the regional water line that we currently have going from Standard down to, I believe, Gleason, that can be used because that is our regional water line. There's a couple others, I believe, in some of the hamlets as well. But in this case, on the west side of the county, there is no regional water line. And so the intent is to divert rural residential parcels of this nature to areas where it already is existing in order to protect the watershed that is there. That's the original intent of the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan with the Water for Life program, is that it's intended to promote the regional water lines so that you aren't constantly taking from the aquifer. Whether that completely stops residential development on the west side, it's hard to say. In some cases, it's case by case, but in this instance, it is on the far side, it is on the border of Rocky View County, and it is isolated from a number of the hamlets, which in that instance, if any water lines were proposed, they would typically go through, to my understanding, through existing communities. And in this case, there isn't one close enough that it may not be able to reach it if there ever was one. But again, that's all hypothetical. We don't know if there's a regional water line planned for this area. Layalta is just to the north. But whether that water line or any future one could come through, it's hard to say. But at this time, there is nothing there. And that's the basis for the staff's recommendation for refusal, is because there is no regional water line. It would be requiring to use groundwater resources. And it's outside of an existing growth node within the county, which is within our regional growth management strategy as well.
Answer your question?
I'm not sure how far we want to get into this, but, and I believe we're dealing with this, and it's going to be an ongoing thing. Like we're dealing with land fragmentation all the time, and my problem is, I am going to be forced to go against county or against county staff recommendations on my personal vote because, as Tony has pointed out, I mean, we have an 18-acre piece of property that we're going to take 3 acres out of a triangle, and when you spin a 120-foot sprayer through there, you're missing an acre and a half in there at least. So I think we, as council, have to figure out a way to make this more transparent, that the rules are all sort of set in stone. Like, I understand where staff is coming from in the fact that we don't want to ruin the aquifer and we don't want to do this, but my little place, a half mile from my place, I have 16 houses that are going off of one aquifer in a quarter section of land. So it's less than ideal, but all those people out there are happy. So, you know, I don't know if we can, you know, I think that when we start talking land fragmentation and trying to push people to go where there's regional water lines, I think we have to do some work as council here to figure out where we want to go, what we want to do here. Unfortunately, development is going to always want to be closer to the city than away from the city, because that's, people are going to have to make their living in order to pay for the ability to live there. So sorry about the rant, but that's the way I feel.
Okay. Any other questions? Donna?
Just a comment, though, that it does seem like a natural division, a natural, that it's not being used and that it won't be used. Like, it feels more natural being in a triangle like that.
Like for farming?
For
operation?
farming, yeah. And you can see that the rest of it is farmed.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Andy?
Through the chair, is the rail line that's shown on here, is that still active, or is it, where's the abandonment start on that rail line?
At Layalta.
On the east side of Layalta?
Yeah.
So there is still an active line there.
There's still track there, and I believe some cars go in once in a while to Canada Malt owns a facility there.
Well,
And
that
on
was
the
reason.
other side is Louis Dreyfus, and they definitely.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of, was Louis Dreyfus one was on the, so this one could end up being abandoned in the near future.
Concrete Buffalo Slope facility that Canada Malt has, and their facilities in Calgary.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think they have any immediate plans to.
Because I understand the fragmentation, but with the subdivision on the other side of it, the other lot on the other side, if it ever was abandoned, it still wouldn't tie into the ag. It wouldn't meld good with the ag industry there. The only one that it would meld good with is a quarter to the north of it. And by taking that out of it, it would actually make that a more farmable piece than, so I'm not sure where I'm at with this one.
Okay, thanks. Andy, turn the mic on.
Andrew Camart, Ace Surveys. More comments. One, we used to do the well studies in the private sewage between redesignation and subdivision, and they've been moved up to the start of the process. And I think the reason for that, it's a big cost on the applicants, but I think it protects council and the county, knowing that it has been proven that we have good water and good sewer at this location, and it will be suitable for residents. My second would be more of a question for planning. I believe along with registration, one of the conditions is a deferred reserve caveat. Does that not state that if the pipeline does come in the future, a water pipeline, that they will hook into it? So it would allow this application to move forward, and 10 years from now, they do pipe water through this area. This resident would then hook up to that water source. So I think it protects us in that sense as well. So.
You're right. Any other comments? Public? Not seeing any. I will close the public hearing for bylaw 2017-48, and we're now back in council. Council's wishes. Scott?
I'll stick to my original, that bylaw 2017-48 be given second reading.
Second reading. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Council wishes, want to do third or? Do third. Tom?
I move that bylaw 2017-48 be given third reading.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks for coming in. And open the public hearing for bylaw 2018-02. Good morning.
Good morning.
Proper notifications been done?
Yes, Mr. Chair, they have.
Does any member of the public have any concerns of any council member listening to public hearing? Not seeing any, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the public hearing to rezone 40.12 acres from Agricultural General District to Rural Business District of Lot 2, Plan 751-0676. So the proposed redesignation area is the current site of the Rocking Our Guest Ranch, a bed and breakfast style resort that caters to international and local tourists alike. The applicant is proposing to redesignate to rural business districts so they can continue to accommodate the existing uses on the parcel while allowing the opportunity for potential future expansion of the facilities for seasonal markets, such as a Christmas market, farm-to-table dinners, agricultural tours, corporate retreats, cooking classes, and other agritourism-related uses. So this redesignation application was brought about after staff had received a complaint, an anonymous complaint, that there was Christmas markets and other activities going on that didn't fit within the original development permit that was approved. So we met with the applicant and provided some recommendations and suggested they apply to redesignate the parcel, which would provide the opportunity to apply for development permits for other uses such as Christmas markets and agritourism uses. So that's why this redesignation application is before you today. And that concludes my presentation for now. I'll just go down to the map, the proposed rezoning area here. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions or concerns? Any member of public have any questions? Go ahead, please. Yes, you got to come up and turn the mic on and state your name, please.
Good morning, council and staff of Wheatland County, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Terry Kinsman. I'm the owner-operator of Rocking Our Guest Ranch, and I just want to address some of the concerns that you will have seen in the letters received from some of my neighbors. Since opening our wedding venue 4 years ago, we have tried very hard to be respectful of our neighbors to the extent that we can when you're running a wedding venue. I do have a decibel meter installed on my phone, as do several of my staff, and just to give you an order of magnitude, here are some common decibel levels. 180 decibels is a rocket at takeoff. 140 decibels is a jet engine at takeoff. 120 decibels is a rock band. 110 loud thunder, 90 city traffic, 80 loud radio, 60 ordinary conversation, and 30 a soft whisper. Long-term exposure to levels over 80 decibels can cause permanent hearing loss, which is not something I want for my staff or myself. Therefore, we ask the DJs to keep the sound level at or below 80 decibels, which is considerably less than a rock band. At 10:30, we ask him or her to turn it down a little lower, as the guests have had several drinks and will not notice anyway. At 11:30, they have to turn the music off. We did have a few growing pains in the first couple of years, and there were a few occasions when I was out of the tent and the DJ played one or two more songs. That did not happen at all last year. All of the staff now knows what to do in my absence. Recently, we held a garage sale, a private garage sale, family garage sale at our tent on the May long weekend, and there were several campers from Eagle Lake who attended the garage sale, so I asked them if the noise bothered them and was told by two couples that they could barely hear it. I myself have driven over to the campground and parked at the front entrance while there was a wedding going on. I had to turn off my truck and get out of the truck to hear any noise from the wedding venue. Last year, we had one wedding with a band, and Leslie Pringle, who owns the campground, sent me an email to complain about the noise. She started her email by telling me that whatever we were doing that year was working, as they were not noticing the noise until the night that the band played. I agreed that the band was far too loud and told her that we would not have bands in the future, and we have said no to all requests for bands since then. We do not get any complaints from the neighbors that we share the driveway with, and in my opinion, they are the only ones who are truly impacted to any great degree by our wedding venue. We also encourage the guests to use the shuttle service, which minimizes the amount of traffic to and from the ranch. All of our bartenders have ProServe training, and we have a detailed process in place to ensure that intoxicated guests do not get behind the wheel of a vehicle and drive. This is our fourth wedding season, and this year we will host 13 weddings at the ranch from May to September. We had our first wedding last weekend. That is 13 out of 365 days, which is less than 4% of the total number of days in a year. Heading into season 4, we have come to realize that weddings are a great deal of work for us, and that there are far less invasive events that we can host at the ranch if we are allowed to do that. It will be better for us and better for our neighbors. Leslie Pringle's letter indicates that we might use the new designation to host rock concerts at the ranch. Why would we want to invite hundreds of drunken people to party on our property with no contract and no security deposit? That simply does not make sense. So what do we have planned? We have been approached by Golden Hills School Division to host a couple of 4-day summer horse camps for kids who are struggling at school and at home. Each of these camps will have between 4 and 6 participants. They will arrive at the ranch in the morning, have lunch at the ranch, and enjoy a day of riding and games. The Siksika Storefront School has asked if we can host a year-end party for their staff of 15. Richardson GMP approached us to do team building events for their teams of 6 or less, which would include an equine assisted learning session, lunch, and a trail ride to be followed by appetizers and drinks. A group of scientists, some from NASA, which is kind of exciting, have approached us to host a farm-to-fork dinner showcasing local producers. They will be in Calgary for a convention, but would like to get their delegates out to explore the local countryside. The number of attendees would be between 100 and 120, and they will be bussed out from Calgary. They would arrive at 5 p.m. for appetizers, have their dinner, and be gone by 10 p.m. These events would not typically have dances, and the music would be background music only. Our chef would like to partner with us to offer hands-on cooking classes for couples staying at the ranch. The maximum for this type of event would be 8 people, and nobody will be driving while under the influence, as they will be staying at the ranch. About 18 months ago, we hosted my uncle's celebration of life in our tent. It was lovely and very low-key. No alcohol and just a few songs were played. The pastor thought it was a beautiful setting for that type of event. We also hosted the Vintage and Vines craft sale at the ranch last year, as we didn't know that we were not allowed to do that. It was an opportunity for local crafters to showcase their talents, and we made almost $1,000 for the Wheatland Hospice Society for the entry fees. The other events that Leslie Pringle references in her letter were a champagne and appetizer event for some of the Calgary wedding planners. That was prior to opening our wedding venue and was an invitation-only marketing event so that we could showcase what we had to offer the wedding planners in the future. There were only 15 people invited and no music was played. We also hosted a culinary event for Open Farm Days. We did this for 2 seasons. This is a government-sanctioned event, and all Alberta farms and ranches are encouraged to participate in Open Farm Days. I worked with Community Futures to get a group of producers together to participate in this initiative. To my knowledge, there was no participation from this area prior to that, and last year they had 3 times as many producers participating in the event, all of which is good for Wheatland County. In year 2, the Minister of Culture and Tourism kicked off the event at Rocking Our Guest Ranch. We were honored to be chosen for this. The desserts served that day were made with local berries, local carrots, and local apples. Both CBC and Global TV were on site, which was exciting for us and for Wheatland County. All of the speakers were given gift baskets from Fieldstone Fruit Wines. We have not participated in this event in the last 2 years because we've had weddings on those weekends. The second year we participated in Open Farm Days, we were asked by the ministry to host an agritourism bus tour for a farm-to-fork dinner. We did not make any money on this event, but the ministry covered our costs. And, as Leslie indicated, we did host a Cinco de Mayo party at the ranch on May 5th. This was, however, a private, by invitation only event for our friends. And I think anyone who has a home or lives in the country is entitled to have people over to events at their residence. This was, we served dinner and there was some music and everyone was gone by 10 p.m. At our wedding venue, we try very hard to showcase local talent. Our wedding cake designer is from Carsland. One of my staff sings at weddings. We have 2 gals from Strathmore who make signs for the weddings, and this year at our chef's tasting dinner, we asked Origin Malting and Brewing to serve their beer in the hopes that our wedding couples would book their services. I'm not saying that we will stop doing weddings entirely, but we would like to do fewer weddings and more of the less labor-intensive events that I just described. Naturally, anything we want to do in the future will have to be approved by the county, and I doubt they are going to approve anything that will create mayhem in the area, nor do we want to do that. We just want to be able to showcase the beautiful county in which we live, because when tourism works, we all work. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Thanks for the presentation. Any other comments, questions? Go ahead, please.
Need a stool back here.
I think the mic man's there.
There you go.
Now.
My name's Leslie Pringle. I'm from Eagle Lake RV Resort, just across the road from the Rocking R. We've been there since 1992, and most of you know who I am and what we do, and the hundreds of locals we've employed, the tens of thousands of guests we've had, and the millions of dollars we've generated for the area in spin-off spending. And it's not about being against anything except the impact of the noise. So I'm not against rural diversification. It makes sense. Showcasing agriculture, it makes sense. What doesn't make sense is that one business has to suffer, or possibly other businesses have to suffer, so that someone else can succeed. And the noise levels, well, a decibel reading doesn't tell you how sound carries, how it's funneled between trees, or which way the wind blows. The times that have been referenced about sitting in the driveway and having to turn the car off, well, no one's sitting in their car while they're camping with the engine running anyway, so that's irrelevant. And besides which, as the email exchange between us followed through with that one, I was able to quote the words of the song that we're playing at that time. So clearly sound travels, and it has more of an impact in different areas than one might assume, depending on which way the sound is traveling at that particular time. There's been times I've been able to stand in the middle of the campground and make out the words of the groom's speech or the best man's speech. Certainly at 11:30 on Saturday night, we could hear the cheering going on. I'm guessing maybe they were leaving for their honeymoon. I don't really know. I try to keep my nose out of that, just like I try and keep my nose out of most things. My main concern with this application is I'm afraid it's another bait and switch. So in the application that was originally brought forward for the wedding venue, it was only for a wedding venue, and that was clearly laid out with an operating season of June to September. And right from the get-go, there were other events, ticketed events, serving alcohol with musical entertainment, and I've got documentation. Since I've brought this up to council, it has been brought forward that yes, those events did actually happen at the Rocking R, and yet in the application for the redesignation, it clearly states, other than the craft market, we have not hosted any of these events. So my concern is, if you're not being honest in the application, and you weren't honest in your first application, what checks and balances do we have to make sure that it's not going to get even noisier and more intrusive? I have lost business over it. I have had complaints. I've had to refund guests who came for a quiet weekend. And so maybe the seasonals that Terry asked about in her multifamily garage sale, they might have been at the further end, or they might not have heard it because they were around their own campfire. But in our group areas that we were running functions, our own group things in, those are right next to the road. So yeah, there was problems, because why should they stop making noise if there's noise coming from across the road? Made it hard on one of my staff who has since left because he didn't want to deal with it anymore, trying to keep people happy when there's no control over what's happening outside of the campground, but it's having a negative effect on our very peaceful campground. And once again, I cordially invite anyone who wants to come hear the noise, give me a ring. I'll provide my cell phone number in private. I don't want it going out in the minutes because I don't need phone calls at 2 in the morning to see if they can buy more wood. But if you want to come, and the only thing that there is to lose is come prove me wrong that you can't hear this noise. It's a simple trip. Give me a phone call. Walk around the campground at night with me and tell me if you can hear it or not. Some nights are quieter than others. Some nights are louder than others. We haven't really made that much headway on being able to communicate with it. So my concern isn't rural diversification. My concern is whether or not my business is going to continue to be negatively impacted by that. So,
Okay.
any questions?
Any questions? Donna?
Yeah, Leslie, when is your quiet time?
11 p.m. Music down at 9:30, music off and voices down at 11. Youth back at their site by 10:30. No bass boosters at any time, and no offensive music.
Amber?
Leslie, I was just wondering if you've had a chance to look at the permitted uses under the rural business district designation, and if you have any specific concerns with those permitted uses.
Well, there's one there called events that isn't really well defined, but the other uses, they're already happening over at the ranch anyways. So that's my big concern. If this events one, which is kind of vague, is the only one that isn't specifically addressed with a definition, really, why not have a Woodstock over there? Just saying I wouldn't want my ranch messed up doesn't really answer the question. There's been very little information provided on what would actually happen that's different over there that's not already happening now.
I just know that you can't, we have to apply for permits through my business if we have any kind of festival, or it's a different permitting that has to go through the county.
Well, strictly speaking, the events that have happened over there that weren't weddings weren't permitted either, and they still happened.
No, what I'm saying is Woodstock couldn't be allowed.
I think it's obvious I'm pushing the point here to make a point. At this stage of the game, these things have all been happening without permission. So what's to stop other things from happening without permission?
Amber?
I think just to clarify, and to your point, we can't, like that's a compliance issue, and that could potentially be an issue with the redesignation or without the redesignation. Just a question to staff, I don't see events as a permitted use. Is there anything, like I looked really carefully, I compared the uses from Ag General to the rural business, and I tried to flesh out exactly what we are permitting right now, and that's the only thing we're looking at right now is that redesignation to country business. And so what I've said to council before is we need to think worst case scenario when we're making a decision. I know we've talked about this in other situations. What is our worst case scenario that would be a permitted use? Because obviously, and I agree, there with anything in the county, there's always potential for non-compliance, right? But that doesn't depend on this redesignation. That non-compliance, that's up to our planning and development department to do like they've done and work on compliance and work on enforcement in those cases. So I don't see anything that is events under permitted, and from my understanding from staff is the discretionary uses. Council will have a chance for that to come back to us and to put some conditions on those development permits when those are being approved, and that's where we can kind of help, because I've been trying to think, because I want to represent all of you in this situation. Like, I love some of what Rocking R is doing. I think it's not debatable that it's doing good things for our community, for the county, for tourism, and for agriculture, and I appreciate that. But I have heard the noise at my house in Jamaica, so I don't need to come visit the campground or the neighbors, because occasionally we do hear it. To the point that it's only 13 weddings this summer, you could look at it from another perspective, that there's only 12 weekends during the summer where we have quiet evenings to enjoy, and that is one of the reasons I moved to Jamaica. So I see different perspectives from this, and we need to find a way to balance those when we're looking at this application. In my mind, the way to balance those is to look at those development permits when they come in, because they're going to need to come in. Terry has indicated that she wants to be in compliance. That's my understanding, and I can only take her at her word. Our only way to kind of mitigate those factors that are affecting you guys as neighbors is through those conditions, through the development permit application process. And so that's kind of where I'm looking at this. In my mind, the permitted uses, I kind of went through them, I read the definitions, and I couldn't find anything that kind of raised a red flag for me. I do know that there's the potential for problems, but there's the potential for problems without the redesignation. So those were kind of my thoughts.
If there hadn't been the blatant statement that none of these things had happened in this second application, I'd be far less concerned. But until I brought them up, there was no acknowledgement that these things had happened.
Okay, any other questions? Comments? Thanks, Leslie.
Okay.
Any other comments? You had your hand up first.
And there was a comment that all neighbors had been notified. I still am not receiving mail-outs about hearings and stuff. So I brought this up last time. I used to get them. I no longer get them.
It was staff. I'll have to ask you about the notification.
Through the chair, it's likely because she's the leasee on the land, and that's why she wouldn't have received the mail out. As per MGA and all the guidelines, we send it to the landowners on title.
Well,
We
that would
can't
be
find
yourselves.
renters and that, yeah, so it's sent to ourselves. We can't send it to people renting properties or leasing properties because we don't have that information on hand. For a general mail out, it would deviate from our practices.
Okay, understand.
Well, I used to get the notifications, and I've held the lease in that location since 1992.
May I suggest talk to staff after and see if you can get your name on as the renter.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Debbie, I think you were next.
Thank you for the opportunity this morning to voice my concerns on this matter.
Could you state your name, please?
Debbie Kay, owner and operator of Strathmore Spruce Tree Farm, and residents on the property. I was initially initially a supporter of the Rocking R Guest Ranch, their wedding pavilion, but have had concerns since they've switched to a tent venue that was approved back from previous council. A bit of the history, I don't know how much history anyone has read, but when the original application in 2013 for change of use to a lodging facility was requested, on October 29th to expand the operation to include a permanent structure for weddings. I supported and I promoted this wedding venue after meeting with the applicant upon their request and reviewing architectural plans of a permanent building and hearing their concerns that their future plans of staying on the farm were in jeopardy. Taking that into very, very much in account, trying to support a neighbor even with concerns that I did have. November 18th, 2013, I wrote a letter of support, spoke in favor of a permanent building at the public hearing while still addressing concerns of the impact that the music and the sound level could have. The permit to operate a lodging facility was approved, including the construction of a permanent building as a wedding venue. June 27th, 2014. Being an adjacent landowner, I received a letter from the county about a change of use lodging facility advising the applicant would like to change from having the permanent building to a 40-80 portable tent to be available for weddings June through September for receptions and dances in the tent.
Debbie, can I make a
Yes.
suggestion?
Yes.
Okay, we're moving forward. These are all things that have been approved and have been granted.
Yes,
And
yes.
now we're just going into there's been a request that we move forward into a redesignation. So anything from today going forward would be appropriate. Past history is stuff that's already been granted. And we really can't, that's not on the table. It's the new moving forward. So if you have any concerns with the change in the designation from today and the new designation, that's what we would like to hear.
Okay, the reason I was saying that is because I feel that all of it has the impact together in relationship to up to present, but thank you.
Okay.
The tent venue is situated in a northwesterly direction overlooking the above-mentioned open area of my crop and the applicant's pasture. Both open areas consist of between 60 and 80 acres between Terry Kinsman's property and my property. Speculation of the loud music noise is no longer speculation. The past 2 seasons I've endured listening to it because the only option of protection living in the rural area is the existing noise bylaw 2012-79 to go through the protocol of a complaint. This is a tent venue business that has been approved and given authority to operate by the jurisdiction of the county. In my opinion, that is not the route or satisfactory way to have to deal with particular loud, disturbing music coming from a venue. I personally have never chosen this option, but have recorded some dates and times and recordings of various events. I believe the effect and the impact of the music and noise under a broader scope like rural business, that the noise from the tent will have even greater impact and continue to escalate excessively. The letter of intent today is identified to accommodate the existing uses while allowing the opportunity for potential future expansion of their facility as seasonal markets, farm-to-table dinners, ag tours, corporate retreats, cooking classes, other related agritourism-related uses. There's quite a wide definition under rural business between discretionary use and non-discretionary use. But if they involve music, then under discretionary use, that an entertainment venue is another whole situation. If the applicant's given the approval to operate and extend their facility using the existing portable tent, this will have a huge impact on the increase in continued instances of loud music and DJs on a continuous basis. The applicant's plans and intents have steadily been changing as approvals have been given. First, a permanent building for the wedding venue on the basis of a permanent solid structure. Change of facility to request the 48 portable tent. Third, a change in zoning from Ag General to accommodate future expansion for existing portable tent venue. The letter of intent dated December 4th, 2017 by the applicant states, weddings are a great deal of work and disturbing for our neighbors, and we'd like to expand the business so we can even host events that are shorter in duration and considerably less intrusive. The events will be much smaller than the number of people at a wedding. At this time, I would like to ask if I could play some recordings that I had taken and for you to hear the less intrusive
Is that what's on here?
Yes, and then I'll continue after that.
Are we capable of playing this? Okay, put it on. How about when that, just a little bit different here, and we have it's just been handed out a package of letters. While they're playing the recording, for listening in solitude, we can review our letters that we've got, okay?
All right, I'll just replay that one.
Okay, we'll just have a short break.
Terry Kinsman had mentioned about moving to smaller events that are less intrusive. And I don't know that that's the case after experiencing small events that aren't related even with weddings. So the effect and impact of the noise music has affected my property and me on a personal basis. And this has impacted me by the loss of my privacy, the loss of my peacefulness, the loss of my quietness, serenity, and enjoyment of my residence on my farm. No longer do I look forward with anticipation of a weekend like I used to, because I know what is to come ahead and what could come ahead with a multiple events that could occur. No longer, if an event is on, am I able to enjoy my friends, my family in the peaceful environment of which they also come out for. My lifestyle of the past 27 years on my farm is such that my enjoyment, my hobbies, and my interests are obtained within from where I reside. My choice is to be in a quiet environment in the rural agricultural setting amongst the wildlife and nature of my farm. And it is my lifestyle and passion for living. So there is a huge concern of the multiple purpose, and noise levels, in my opinion, cannot be attained by just decibel readings. A professional acoustical engineering person is far more qualified than the applicant to make decisions on what I hear on my deck and what I hear inside my house when events are going. And I would like to thank you for the opportunity of speaking today.
Thank you. Any other comments? Please, your turn.
Yes, thank you. My name is Mrs. Margaret Farsh. I live in Chestermere, but I do own the property adjoining this property that you're dealing with. So I have written you a note. I'd just like to reread it into the record. To the council, read this file, LU 201801, and then the description of the legal of Northwest 27, 23, 24, west of the 4th. Please be advised that I wish to oppose the application to change the zoning designation from agricultural general district to rural business district. My property adjoins the applicant property on the north side. If and when I wish to market my 14-acre parcel, I believe it would sell better as a desirable home site without a commercial operation right next door. My property presently has a good building site and has a desirable view to the west and a good road access. I believe the new zoning would or could distract from this picture. Thank you. I appreciate your listening.
Thank you. And just for the record, any letter that's sent to the public hearing is part of the record. You don't have to reread them.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you anyway. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, anything new to add, Leslie?
Just one question. If a party is a private function, why advertise it and use it as marketing on your professional social media channels? If it's not a forerunner to getting more business for themed parties, why have it there under your professional name?
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Harry, do you want to answer anything?
I just have a couple comments. Leslie's indication that I've lied and that I've hosted events that I'm not supposed to host is not true. The only thing that we hosted that we weren't supposed to host was the Vintage and Vines Market. And yes, I'll stand to have my hands slapped for that one. We were supporting local crafters and the Wheatland Hospice Society, and I shouldn't have done that, and I did that. Everything else, there were no lies involved. I'm not hiding anything, which is why the Cinco de Mayo, other people were posting things on the Facebook page about the Cinco de Mayo party, so I put a couple pictures on there. And yes, is it a way to market the ranch, to show people that this is a beautiful venue and potentially book more weddings? Or if this rural business designation goes through, more events of that sort? Yes, it is. So everyone who's concerned about this is concerned about the noise, as am I. I do not want to fight with my neighbors, and I do not want to continue to have these noisy events. If there's a way for us to do quieter, smaller, more intimate events during the week or on the weekends that don't even have music, some of them, then that's what I would like to do. So they're opposing the redesignation to rural business district, and at the same time, they're completely twisted out of shape over the amount of noise generated by the wedding tent. Well, if I can't do something other than weddings, then I'm going to continue to do weddings, and potentially we can do 20 a year. So you can say I'm lying if you want to. I'm not lying, and I resent the fact that I'm being accused of that. I am trying to be respectful, and I've tried to be respectful right from the get-go. Many wedding venues out there do a wedding on Friday night, one on Saturday morning, one on Saturday afternoon, and one on Sunday. I have no desire to be that intrusive in my neighbors' lives. I mean, the campground makes noise all the time. It should be designated rural business district as well. Same with the tree operations on both sides of us. I mean, there's at least 2, if not 3 months a year where we're constantly bombarded by the noise from the tree farms. And the tree farm on one side of us is right where our private space would be, where we would have fires and entertain family and friends. So I understand that they have to do what they have to do. And I'm just asking for the same understanding from my neighbors.
Thank you. Any questions, Amber? Sorry. Can ask us.
Terry, may I just ask you a question? In the explanation from staffing, when it's outlining what you're looking to accommodate, the uses that are mentioned are seasonal markets, farm-to-table dinners, agriculture tours, corporate retreats, cooking classes, and other ag tourism-related uses. Would you say that all of the uses that you would be looking at would be potentially agritourism, or no?
I am more interested in agritourism than anything else. You know, the open farm days events that we hosted were a lot of fun for us. They are not nearly as much work as the weddings. They end early. Everyone's gone by 10 o'clock. You know, there was only a handful of people in the tent at 9:30. I mean, Wendy's here from Community Futures and can speak to that. You know, the fact that we're being accused of doing an event that was not sanctioned or not included, open farm days is not that type of event. I mean, all farms and ranches in Alberta are encouraged to participate in open farm days. That was not something that we did under the table. I mean, I worked very closely with Community Futures to establish this in the area, and as I said, since then, it's exploded. I mean, Wendy's working with dozens of farms and ranches and businesses that are now entertaining open farm days, which is good for Wheatland County. It's good for Alberta. So anything that we're looking at doing is going to be far less intrusive than weddings. The weddings are not a lot of fun for us either. They are a ton of work. And we're dealing with a whole bunch of 30-somethings that are drunk, and they're not a lot of fun to work with. So if I can get away from doing weddings and do something that showcases the beautiful venue that we have and the county that we live in and allows me to continue showcasing the Badlands tourism. I sit on the board of directors for Canadian Badlands, and I know how important it is, how important tourism is to this region. I mean, we need to work together to partner to increase tourism in the area, and that's the type of thing that I'm interested in doing. I am passionate about tourism. I am not passionate about weddings. But we have a wedding tent, and we're going to continue to do some weddings. I would just like to, you know, create an income stream for us that doesn't involve something as labor intensive and as loud and as long as weddings. They can say that I lied and that I'm, you know, yes, you don't have to believe me, like, I mean, or they don't have to believe me. I'm hoping that you believe me. You know, there's nothing I can do to make them believe me. They're going to believe whatever they want and say whatever they want to say.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Any other questions? Is it new, Debbie? Okay. It better be new. Okay, got 1 minute.
Amber, you asked the question about the agritourism farm and when they had when the Rocking R Ranch, September 14th, 2016, had an event under agritourism. They had dinner and band. It was a ticketed event. Well, agritourism event, it equally was just as loud, if not even louder, when you can even hear the event inside my home as I listened to. And I forgot to give the pictures earlier as well, Mr. Reeve, of how the land presents. If I could give this and leave these with council.
Just start it with Ben to pass it around.
Yes.
Okay, but it's still a noise issue for you?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thanks for that then.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Not seeing any. I'll close the public hearing for bylaw 2018. Scratch out of 02, I believe. Okay. I'll give you a quick second to look at the pictures that were presented. And okay, council's wishes. Carry on. Amber?
I have a question for staff, if that's
Sure.
okay. How do we deal with ag tourism events on ag general designated land? Because I know they're happening, and it seems like relatively common. I mean, we are fully supportive of ag tourism and open farm days. Are they out of compliance every time they have open farm days, or how is that dealt with, just so I understand that?
Through the chair, no, it's more the structured, organized kind of regular events like the vintage divines, like a Christmas market, like those specific where you're having a large gathering and it's advertised and it's a commercial venture. Open farm days where people are going around to different farms, that's not, you're not requiring a development permit for that. It happens all across Alberta.
Okay, go ahead.
The second question is, has planning and development looked at including ag general as a discretionary use, or sorry, have they considered including ag tourism events as a discretionary use under the ag general designation? And what would the pros and cons of that be?
Through the chair. So originally when the original permit was issued, there was no rural business district. Everything fell under that agricultural general district. So you had lodging facilities, you had all types, the wedding venue, it all fell under that ag general. Of course, that brings about the issues of potential noise and nuisance impacts on adjacent landowners. So for transparency purposes, the pro would be to introduce its own zone so that an applicant has to go through a full rezoning process in order to have something like a wedding venue on their parcel. Otherwise, it could pop up on literally any parcel in the county that's zoned ag general, and it would just go to MPC and the decision could be appealed. By putting it in its own district and taking weddings, which falls under the entertainment venue definition, which is a discretionary use, by taking it into its own district, we're giving council the control and the ability to have a say as to where these facilities go in the county. I'd say that'd be a pro of having it as a separate district. If you're putting it as a discretionary use in ag, I'd say the pro would be, yes, that's more business friendly and it's streamlined, but there'd be a negative impact on adjacent landowners. And I think overall there'd be an impact on the quality of life for residents where they don't feel they have the rezoning and the public hearing process to go through when making a decision.
Just to clarify, so I'm not speaking to the wedding venue aspect of it.
Okay.
I'm more thinking of just egg tourism events like the farm-to-table dinners, some equine assisted learning activities, things like that, that are certainly more agriculture bent. Like if we leave the wedding aspect out of it, that's in the past.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking more forward thinking because we're encouraging our egg producers to be going more in the direction of egg tourism, and it's a way to make farms more sustainable. And I think this is going to be something we're going to be seeing coming up more frequently. I understand this might be something bigger if we're looking at corporate retreats and things like that, but we might have egg producers that want to offer equine assisted corporate retreats or that kind of thing. So I was just kind of wondering if that might be a middle ground without opening this up to like the whole, where I'm seeing potential for concern, and I do try and look at this long-term, what would worst case scenario, and it's when we start looking at the discretionary uses of like entertainment venues for, you could conceivably use that for a concert or, you know, and I realize that would come back to council and we need to, like I have to trust in our council that we will use good discretion in those discretionary uses, but.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if I may. So currently we are working on updating a very old events bylaw kind of thing that you have here at the county, which is not working for many of the uses and businesses that you're seeing come in front of you. So we are going to present a draft to council, hopefully at the end of August or in the fall, and this I hope will address many of the issues. So we've got permitted and discretionary issues as uses we need to address in the ag district, in the rural business district, and then events specifically, which will be covered under the events bylaw from a compliance perspective, also noise perspective, permitting, etc. So I think going this route, it's going to help. Because you are correct, you are going to get a lot more of these types of businesses and events coming into Wheatland County, and we need a mechanism and a framework in order for them to be able to run successfully, but not have a negative impact on their adjacents. And there are ways and methods of doing that, but we don't have the legislative process and descriptions and rules and regulations in place yet. But we are working on that now.
Any other questions? Council's wishes?
I'm going to explain my rationale first, if that's okay.
Okay.
My rationale for making this motion is that I think by looking at residential business designation, it gives council the discretion to look at those development permit applications and put some conditions on them that can help protect the adjacents and at the same time give the applicant some more opportunity to pursue some alternate uses that might help mitigate some of the problems with the current uses that are happening there. And I realize we have to take all of that as it's been stated and presented to us. And I'm also being cognizant of like our current legislation and land use bylaw that we're working under now. I do think we need to work on that a little bit, and like you said, work on our event bylaw. But given the current documents that we have to work under, I'm going to move the bylaw 2018-02 be given second reading.
Okay, any questions? All in favor? All in favor, Ben, or voting? For second reading, Amber measures.
But, yeah, I know, but before I can vote on that, I would like to ask council if we could go in camera for a couple of minutes on a position of process before.
Okay, we'll do second reading, and then we'll have another motion if you want to go in camera. How's that sound?
I'd like to do it
We've got
before
a motion on the floor. I got a motion on the floor. Okay, and we're voting on it,
I
so.
can rescind my motion.
No, I got to go through with the motion. We still got third reading to go through. Okay, all in favor of second reading? Carried. Ben?
Now I'd ask that we go in camera with staff.
Okay, Ben's moved to go on camera. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks for coming in. You can come back in after we're. Yeah. Yeah.
That's called communism.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Council's wishes?
I'll move that bylaw 2018-02 be given third and final reading.
Been moved. Any questions or concerns? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thanks for coming in. Go ahead, Amber.
May I add and I forget what it's called, an order of motion to add something to the agenda?
You can
It's
try.
1 minute. It would just be a request to ask staff to prepare an RFD for doing a land use bylaw amendment to move farmers market, market garden, and equestrian center permitted uses to fall under discretionary uses, under under rural business district.
Staff, are you working on this already? When do you think you could have one prepared or a discussion time, or would you like to do it in council committee of the whole and discuss it first?
Yeah, we'll probably bring it to Committee of the Whole, World Planning and Priorities as a draft.
As a draft?
Yes.
Okay, would that satisfy your?
Yeah.
Okay, would you like to amend it to bring it to a committee of the whole for further fleshing
Yes,
out?
please. Thank
Okay.
you.
Any discussion? Get that, Diane? Okay, all in favor? Carried. And I believe we have a 10 o'clock. You've been patiently waiting. Okay, they want to finish the planning matters first, okay? So then staff can get about their other business. Go ahead, so we got bylaw for first reading, request for decision for bylaw 2018-04. Go ahead, Colton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a bylaw to redesignate 4.98 acres from agricultural general district to country residential district within the southeast 22425 west of the 4th. It's about a half mile to Highway 817 and approximately 2.5 kilometers north of the town of Strathmore. Staff's recommendation is that council choose option 1 and grant first reading of the bylaw for redesignation, and that a public hearing for the bylaw be scheduled for July 3rd, 2018 at 9 a.m. in county council chambers. Our recommendation for approval is based on the RGMS, the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, the Municipal Development Plan, and the Country Residential District of the Land Use Bylaw. The report notes, goes through the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan as well as the RGMS. This is an existing house, and there's the existing dwelling and outbuildings on the section, on the proposed area for redesignation, which is why this file did have a support recommendation. It isn't removing bare land from production. And in terms of the land use bylaw, the uses within the proposed area for rezoning align with the intents and purposes of the CR district. Any future modifications to the existing structures or development would require the appropriate development permits as per the county's land use bylaw. In terms of circulation comments, Alberta Health Services had their standard comments. ATCO Pipelines noted no objection. There was no comments submitted internally. This was also submitted to all landowners within a mile of the subject lands, with no letters received in either support or objection at the time that the report was prepared. Just go down to the location plan here. See, it's adjacent to the former Western Feedlots lands. This is the subject property. At the subdivision stage, they will have to do a phase 1 environmental site assessment. That's been a standard comment now from Alberta Health Services in regards to any proposed development on these parcels that were the former feedlot. You'll see based on our environmental mapping on our Muni site, this proposed rezoning does not impact that. And this is a map showing everyone that was circulated in regards to this application. So I'll just go back up to the RFD. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Council's wishes. Tom?
I move that bylaw 2018-04 be given first reading.
Okay, any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Other planning matters?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, can we get the motion for the public hearing date?
I'll move that the public hearing for bylaw 2018-04 be scheduled for July 3rd, 2018 at 9 a.m. in Wheatland County Council chambers.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And other planning matters, request to waive planning request for decision, page 128, I believe. Any questions?
I'll move council accept the staff's recommendation and waive the fees, including the refund of $450 as described on the RFT.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now for the 10 o'clock. Oh, could you turn the mic on, please?
You're going
Oh.
to just advance first? Okay. Okay, sounds good. Okay, well, we can advance to the next slide then. Okay, there's some that we've had, you have to hold it down the whole time. Okay. So thank you for allowing this opportunity to come in and present to council on the Community Futures program, as well as our organization, Community Futures Wild Rose. So to start off, we want to thank Councillor Amber Link for being Wheatland County's Community Futures Wild Rose Board representative and your council support for our organization over the past several years. So I'm Wendy Gerbrandt, and this is
David Petrovich.
Okay, so next slide, please. Just to give you a brief history of the Community Futures program itself. So it's a federally funded program by Western Economic Diversification. It was established in 1986, and throughout Alberta there are 27 locations and 269 in total across Canada. Next slide, please. So here's just a slide just to talk about Community Futures serves as an increasingly diverse range of entrepreneurs right in our own community. So it is a rural program meant for rural entrepreneurs. Next slide. So Western Economic Diversification has identified 3 strategic priorities going into our new fiscal. So the one priority is Indigenous and women, youth and persons with disabilities, and cluster growth through clean technology, value-added agriculture, advanced manufacturing, digital industries, clean resources, and health biosciences. So those are our 3 priorities for the next fiscal. Next slide, please.
So Wendy has talked about Community Futures in general. Community Futures Wild Rose, which is located in Strathmore, was actually established in 1986. And our vision is full employment in thriving communities. And our mission is to promote, assist, and retain economic development and employment activities within the region. Next slide, please. So we are a nonprofit and we're community owned, and that's why council has a representative on our board. The board and all our shareholders are here to help optimize the use of our $6 million investment fund. So we have about 6.3, almost $6.4 million that we lend out. We are represented by 15 elected officials, and the shareholder communities are listed, and we go all the way up to Trochu and Torrington, down to Bassano, and we include Carsland and Dalmead. Next slide, please. So what's our strategic priorities and community futures? Well, we're initiate economic growth and development within the region, promoting healthy, stable, and diversified economy. Now remember, we are rural and we do focus on rural. That is our mandate. We ensure the stewardship of that $6 million, well, we're actually at $6.4 million investment fund. And we're here to raise the profile of the organization as a centralized resource for yourselves and all our shareholders. Next slide, please. So we basically, you could say that we break down into 4 pillars. The business loans, and that's our $6.4 million fund that we utilize for loans, and that has grown considerably over the years. Business training and workshops, we do a lot to do with educating people on how to be business owners, entrepreneurs. And when we say training and workshops, that's as groups. Because the next one is business planning and counseling. So we move from the large group down to the individual counseling. So we'll get a business coming through our doors who will say, I want to set up in Wheatland. And then what we'll do is we'll help them through the business planning process, counsel them. We'll tell them to go find the best rate with the banks if they can't. And then if they get rejected, they will come to us. But we don't charge for that. That's a free service. And we have helped out a countless number of businesses in our region with understanding how to be an entrepreneur. And I have to stress that because it's not only the loans. The loans is something measurable. That counseling, though, is just who comes through our door. But the number of businesses that have set up just because we've helped them through the process, or even we've gone through issues, legal issues, we've gone through multiple different issues that an entrepreneur can encounter. They come to us, explain their issue, and we help find the resources or help them with an answer. And last but definitely not least is community economic development. And that's the big projects. That's where we try to stimulate the economy from the grassroots up. Next slide, please. So how has Community Futures Wild Roads supported Wheatland County and area during our 29 years? We've invested through loans $2.6 million in Wheatland County and area. So we've had an impact, and you can, if you look at your per capita based on your 2016 statistics, it's almost $300 per capita we've invested from our investment fund in your county. Next slide, please. Now, this is research that has been done by Western Economic Diversification, and it refers only to the loans, but it also is, the implication is that we're doing much more than the loans, and I'll explain this. All 3 graphs, if you look at them, are broken into the left and the right is the green and the blue. The green is when we've lent to a business. The blue is any financial institute lending to a business. And if you actually look at the results, for example, employment growth, we see about, on average, we've got about an 8% growth when we've assisted businesses. Non-assisted businesses, now those are the ones that got loans from traditional lenders, banks and credit unions, they're 2.9%. So we're considerably over double there. If you look at sales growth, 11.2 for us, everybody else 6.2. And then business longevity, and that's measured as a 5-year rate, 66% versus 46%. The reason that we're successful in what we do is because we don't lend and say, we'll see you in a few years. We lend and say, how can we keep helping you? And we do that over and over again. And there's so many of our businesses that will come to us and say, a year later, I need help with this, or I'll need help with that. And that's where our success comes from. Next slide, please.
Some catch up here. So again, just to reiterate a little bit what Dave talked about, we have numerous financing and business supports to help rural entrepreneurs to get started and expand to their full potential. So that's just a little jargon on our side. As local champions of business and community, Community Futures knows that quality of life, passion, and profit can coexist well here. And this is part of actually our new branding that we've come up with this year. So I was just showing a slide on, what to expect for our new branding as we go forward. And next slide, please. So just to elaborate a little bit more on the community economic development services or initiatives that we've worked on, and this is just a really small sampling. So CAD is an approach where community members come together to take collective action and generate solutions to common problems at a grassroots level. So again, it's that the groups working together from the bottom up to accomplish economic development. So, can we go back for just a quick sec, Ellen? Thanks. So some of the initiatives that we've worked on are through capacity building. We've done the labor market partnerships. We've got the recent one working right now with metal fabrication. Tourism initiatives, it could be Canadian Badlands. We also done work with Boomtown Trail, et cetera. Open Farm Days is a big tourism initiative that we've been working on now for 4 years. Strategic planning, we're actually mandated to do X many number of strategic plans with groups throughout the year. Board and committee developments, we've done lots of work bringing Alberta Culture and Tourism out to help develop those committees so that they can create a sustainable organization. Business vitality initiatives, that was with AUMA and ACME, and Strathmore did that one. And then again, like David talked about, was the business training and counseling, one of the really key components of our business. We've also worked on business walks and different business retention and expansion surveys or initiatives, and community beautification. So we've done, one of our loan projects or products is actually out of community beautification, and they can come in and do some enhancements throughout their building. But we've actually used it as an out-of-the-box thinking tool where businesses, they can't maybe afford to write a check for $5,000. So they'll actually come in and we'll run it under a CB or a social economy loan, and it actually goes to the organization. So Three Hills been really instrumental in that one. So it's a contribution and they just make monthly loan payments, and it's actually kept their seniors outreach bus running for several years. So very effective. So, okay, next slide, please. So just to talk a little bit about some of our existing initiatives that we currently have going on, and ones that we've participated in for several years. So the first one under business training is the Chinook Entrepreneur Challenge, and it's an annual business plan challenge every year. It starts in January, and each of the participants that register can go through 8 training workshops to actually help them develop and create a really strong business plan. And at the end of that, they can actually enter it into the competition, and then there's cash prizes awarded. So that's free for anybody in the Wild Rose region that can participate. We're working right now on the Community Futures Training Program, so we call it CFTP. And it's basically going to be a series of training workshops or modules to help train entrepreneurs in different aspects. So it could be financial, it could be marketing, more business plan development, etc. Some of the CED initiatives that I talked about in the last slide, so currently we have our metal fabrication project that Dave and Wheatland County has supported, and he's working full force on that. And then we have the Open Farm Days initiative, which we actually just received a small bit of funding from the province last week. So we will be collaborating with our producers again this year for Open Farm Days. And we'll also have applied for the Agritourism Expansion Initiative grant, and we should know by the end of June if we were successful in that research study. So that's coming forward. Youth initiatives. So we have the Rotary, it's now called the Rotary Alberta Youth Entrepreneur Camp, so RAYAC, and it's a 1-week camp for youth 13 to 15 years of age that get to go to camp for a week and learn all about entrepreneurship, and they actually create a product. They go through business plan development. Fabulous program, and we send anywhere from 4 to 6 students annually to that camp. And we also support Junior Achievement of Southern Alberta, and I sit on that Rural Leadership Council, and we bring forward workforce readiness, financial literacy, and entrepreneurship programs to the region, and we probably support about 1,200 kids through that every year. So pretty impactful. Next slide, please. This is Dave.
So I have this slide up for a reason. You're a shareholder, and we are community-owned. We need your help as well, directing and getting out the word about us and directing them to our door. because ultimately your economy will improve the more people you send through our door. And that's what we're here for. The ultimate goal is a rural economic development. That's in a nutshell. And we can't help you if people aren't coming from Wheatland. And that's what we're here to say. You know, please refer people to us. Since we've actually started these presentations, we've got some counselors who have sent people to us, and we've been working with them. We gave out a loan recently to one of those individuals, and now they're starting a new business, and it's very exciting. So we want to keep going. So we're asking you to please help spread the word, because we will take what you send us and work with that person. And even if it doesn't get a loan through us, we don't care. What we do care about, though, is that ultimately they set up that business. That includes, by the way, projects. If you have something you're struggling with, how to get this something off the ground that could be economical, then send it to us. I'm talking about the economy, improve your economy. We can make something work out of that. That's where community economic development comes from. So basically, in a nutshell, please help us and we can help you. So next slide, please. So we want to thank you for your continued support of Community Futures Wild Rose, and we really do appreciate you being a shareholder. Thank you, and please ask any questions.
Any questions? Amber?
I just want to commend Dave and Wendy and thank you guys for coming and presenting to council. I do want to reiterate, we did identify in our strategic plan that public awareness of what Community Futures does is a need to expand that, and they've been working really hard through social media and traditional advertising with radio and initiatives like that. But I would just ask all of council to share in your social network whatever methods you think are the best way, just to try and help get that word out there. And I just want to congratulate Dave as going to be our future new general manager of Community Futures, and Wendy's continuing on working hard. She does incredible projects as well. So I want to thank both of you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'll say something.
Scott?
I want to thank you guys because I've had 2 loans through Community Futures for 2 separate businesses. One I paid off in 3 years and it really helped out a lot. And my other one helped us buy a shop in Strathmore.
Oh, fantastic.
So they did really good and
thank you.
Very easy to work with. Our business has been in Strathmore for going on 40 plus years, so helped out a lot.
Thank you, and that's great to hear that.
Is the cap still 150? And has that ever been looked at? Because I know when you're buying property, that doesn't get you very far. That's all something.
Absolutely not. We have petitioned Western Economic Diversification to increase our cap, and it didn't happen again, and that's frustrating. But just to say, we have written a loan just recently for $258,000. We can go up to $300,000 under certain circumstances, and we have. But we also have been working in partnership, and those partnerships are giving us more access. And for example, I know that BDC and Futurepreneur, if we call them up and we have a loan, they will sometimes just rubber stamp it, say, well, if you guys like it, we're going to rubber stamp it. And because we know you guys do a good job, our success rate has been such that the traditional banks and other lenders know about us. So we can go beyond that. So I just want to stress that it may seem like a cap, and yeah, it's a bit painful when we do an individual loan sometimes, but we will get that. If we need to, we will go outside and find that other capital.
Any other questions? Well, thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much. And Wendy just wants to add one thing.
So thank you again for having us. And I actually have a communications package here. There's a poster that you can hang up within the county office, as well as some pamphlets. So anybody walking in the door, they're welcome to take one. When you run out, let us know. We'll restock. No problem there. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Motion accept for the information. Don has moved, accepted as information. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. I'm thinking You're here from Strathmore? Are you ready to go? Yeah, we can go now. Unless you want to sit back there and wait somewhere. That way, if we're late on one and early on another, kind of averages out. Yeah, turn the mic on too. Thank you.
Okay. That's okay. Thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to update you on the joint project that we're all constructing. We used to call it the K-9 School Field House. Of course, we now call it the George Freeman School and the Strathmore Motor Products Sports Center. Got that up. My name is Rob Roycroft, and I'm the town's project lead on this. Here today to give you a quick update. I must apologize. No, that's okay. For a little bit of a slip on our parts last month when we neglected to send the proper invitations to the Sobeys sponsorship announcement. Purely a mistake on our parts, and one for which I accept full responsibility as the lead on the program. I can assure you it will not happen again, and in fact we're working closely with staff right now on the next announcement opportunity. We've also reinforced within our structure that Alan is the primary contact and that all information will be sent to him directly. So, in general, the construction is proceeding well. You can see it rising out of the ground, a great big gray monolith, school tucked around in behind. It's about to get a bit more colorful, the school, as they start to put on some of the exterior cladding. The harsh winter conditions experienced this year have had an impact both on schedule and budgets. Efforts are focused on having actual construction completed in time for the school year. It's likely that some testing and commissioning will extend into the actual school year itself, but that wouldn't affect the actual use of the building. We're working really hard right at this point in time to make up some of that time and find some cost savings. And as we progress further towards the end of the actual construction cycle, we'll have a much better effort of that. This morning we had a project meeting out there in the site, and they told us they're at around the 70% construction mark. So that's a pretty big milestone. For a long time we saw the building rising out of the ground, and now you don't see an awful lot because it's all mechanical, electrical, HVACs, all that sort of stuff is happening inside. All the major concrete pours are completed, and work is hard underway inside on drywall and boarding. Maybe a couple of shots we have here. So the exterior block work, these are probably maybe a couple of weeks ago. The rendering in the top right is the final coloration. So what we're seeing down below is the current state of the exterior block is just about complete. Next. Again, this is the back end of the school showing what it looks like today and what it's going to look like. Next. This is the entrance. That will be the primary public entrance into the facility for both students going off to the left and participants, users of the recreation facility going into the right. Next up. As I said, the mechanical room is one place that's getting an awful lot of attention now. And there's tons and tons and tons of wires and things being hooked up. I think the schedule is in 2 weeks the fiber optic cables will be pulled in. So, you know, we're getting well along, but there's still an immense amount of work to do. The solar panels that the province has asked us to install in the roof, they're a 12-week lead time. And they were just given the final go-ahead last week, and we have 12 weeks left until school starts. So you can see how tight we're actually getting. But everybody remains optimistic that we're going to continue. This is the school gym area, And you can see the track up on top. The handrails are being fabricated. These were temporary ones for safety purposes. As I said, all the major concrete work is done. There will be various floor treatments in different parts of the facility. Next one. And again, a view from the floor looking up, giving you a sense of the size and scale of the project. These last two photos, of course, are of the gymnasium area, not the actual school classrooms. And I think, is there any more? Oh, there's the washrooms and change rooms that are between the field house and the school. Next. Nope. So you can see the state of where we're at in terms of the second floor and the first floor. Again, this was about 2 weeks ago, so it looks different even today in that short period of time. Is there any more? Oh. Okay, so you can see the plastic hoarding being put up inside to protect certain areas, some other areas, depending upon what's going on. They have started some painting internally as well, and 1,000 things hanging from the roof, which of course are wires, connectors, and the like. Oh, last but not least is these are the colors of the finishes inside that you will see in the final product. Okay, I think that's it. Oh, okay. We're planning a site trip, site tour opportunity. A date hasn't yet been selected. We'll have to coordinate hundreds of different people. Probably it'll be about 4 or 5 o'clock at night, and we'll be taking people through in groups of about 10 to 12 or so. So we'll schedule a time when that can happen. Later in the day is important for us to be there because the bulk of the contractors will be off the site, so it'll be a safe environment for everybody to be in. At this point, I'd like to call Sharon McCormick up to give a brief update on the sponsorship program.
Thanks. Good morning.
Good morning.
I was here back in January, I think it was, and we were talking about the sponsorship. I see you pulled out your sponsorship brochure. I just wanted to give you an update in terms of where we're at with respect to naming rights sponsors. So we have been able to work with a couple of businesses. We have some contracts on the go at the moment. They're not fully signed off and completed yet, so I can't announce who they are, but you'll be hearing those fairly shortly. We do still have a couple of naming right opportunities for other businesses. So my ask here is if you do know some prominent families in the county, other businesses, corporations that you may work with that you think have an interest in helping to support the community in this way and at the same time gain some exposure for their businesses. I'd love to be able to make that connection with them. So any warm introductions are extremely helpful. What we have available at this time are the 4 change rooms. Each of those would be available for individual businesses. It's a great opportunity. It's going to be a very high traffic area, obviously, for teams and participants coming into the facility. They get the opportunity to have the name on the door and above the door, so it gives them a little bit of a two-dimensional kind of exposure for people also being able to see their name as they're entering into the facility. There are also 2 score clock opportunities that are available. Those ones in particular, we would love to be able to secure a sponsor for those at the time that the facility is being fitted out, but prior to it opening, just because the names for those become part of the manufacturing process for the score clocks. And then we have 1 playing surface, the futsal surface, still available. And interestingly, that happens to be the playing surface as soon as you walk into the facility itself. So again, great exposure as people are coming in. It's one that people are going to have to walk past on all sides in order to get to the other playing surfaces. So the town has been steadily working on the sponsorship lead. We have brought on former councillor Steve Graychuk. Sorry, Steve, to also help on the sponsorship and see if we can, continue along our aim is to try and get the naming rights sponsored secured prior to opening. That's not a hard, fast date. We will continue with this work once the facility is opening. It won't hold up any of the work being done. And as Rob mentioned, we're also looking forward to organizing a site tour that we can bring in other prospects who are considering the opportunity to become a naming rights sponsor to actually see the facility. As you can imagine, the kind of seeing is believing, and seeing inside the facility, I think, would help. Lots of questions around sight lines, who's going to see it, you know, where's my sign going to be? And so it's a little bit harder to do in a paper exercise than it is if we're actually able to tour them through the facility. So that will certainly help as well. And that's currently where we're at with regards to sponsorship.
Thanks, Sharon. So very quickly, what's coming up in the next little while? You may have seen an advertisement already gone out for the first of the full-time permanent positions that we'll be hiring to operate the facility. I'd like to have at an upcoming meeting in July or August, and we'll work with Alan on it, a recreation manager come in to start to talk about some of the programming and offerings that are going to be there. This is all work that we're actively trying to get accomplished in the next little while. But when you start to talk about scheduling and programming, you know, we're down into the nitty-gritties now. This thing is becoming real, and it's going to be part of the region's recreation capacity in the not-too-distant future. I had a brief bit of a report here that I'll give to Alan. We get these every month on the program, and it tells you fascinating things like how many OH&S inspections, how many trip and falls, and how many miles of wire have been installed, and the status of the various subcontracts. It's a lot of detail, Alan. I wouldn't be surprised if you don't really need to read it all, but they are available. And that's it in terms of an update. Sharon and I would be pleased to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. Any questions?
I have one question. I was talking to Mayor Fuel, and he said something to me about boards for lacrosse in there. Is there boards in the facility, or is it open, or because if lacrosse is going to be played in there, that needs to have boards?
I believe the boards are part of open. It's open at this point. I think, if I can recall, that was one of the items on our list to try and seek sponsorships for.
I didn't see it on there, I don't think.
There's a lot of other facilities and features that have been added to the program from the original that we put in the brochure, the big ones, but we're open for further conversations.
Okay.
I can just clarify that. So it's not the sponsorship of the boards themselves, but the revenue generated through sponsorship. It's one of the enhancements that the sponsorship revenue would help to facilitate.
I think they were $350,000, if I don't recall, from the early estimates.
My son plays lacrosse, and I know they wouldn't be allowed to go in there if there wasn't boards.
Yeah.
Because there'd be lots of stuff broken from balls. Those balls are really hard.
And that's one of the reasons why we've been putting such an effort into the sponsorship program, is to add those enhancements and facilities to the project that the original core budget didn't have the capacity to handle.
While I'm thinking about too, netting, because if there's an track upstairs, netting's almost like a hockey arena.
Yeah.
The same kind of thing. So.
Yeah, they have a curtain, I think is what they have in place, yeah.
Any other questions? Well, thank you for coming in. I appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks for the opportunity to keep you up to date.
Okay. A motion to accept as information. Scott? All in favor? Carried. Okay, unfinished business, scheduling of planning and priority sessions. Alan?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff would like council to consider hosting a planning and priority session in August, and August 15th if possible.
August what?
August 15th.
15th? That's the day after council on the 14th? Okay. Any objections? You need a formal motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, I would like council
would
to
like
consider
it?
that if possible, commencing
Okay.
at 9 a.m. if possible.
Okay. 15th.
I'll move we have a planning and priority session on Wednesday, August 15th.
At 9 o'clock? Okay. Any questions? Yeah. Okay. No questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay. Reeves report. It's on the server. Any questions?
Alan brought something up to me before about the governance meeting, and the RMA would like to have an invitation, and I forgot to invite them. So I'm asking you to.
What's that?
RMA?
To go to the government's meeting?
Yeah.
With the Calgary Metropolitan Region Board. Maybe just, so I think you're away
Okay.
when we talked about it. I talked with Al Kamir in
Okay.
Kananaskis a few weeks ago at the CLGM conference. And he said, because I said, why is RMA not attending the odd Calgary Metropolitan Region Board? He says they would love to attend. They would just like to get a formal request from elected officials. So
That would be, what's council feel like over that? Over just the governments or the board?
Actually, I put a motion on the floor to have council ask your board if they would consider that request from this council to have the.
We'll have to take that to the next board meeting, I'm sure. Yeah, but if you want to go to the government's meeting, I don't know how,
they're all public meetings.
they're all public, yeah,
Except for
but
the
most of it's in camera.
Except for the closed session.
Yeah,
Even I can't sit in the closed
Yeah.
session, Glenn, so.
that's right.
Yeah, and I talked to Al about that. I let him know that. There are public meetings. Their board needs a letter to the board of RMA in order for them to support sending someone. It's kind of their process.
Okay, so they would attend the public part of the meeting.
That's correct.
Okay, so your motion, Ben, would be that we would send a letter to the RMA telling them about the public part of these meetings, and they can certainly attend. That's your motion then? Okay, any questions? All in favor? Carried, okay. Anything else on the report? I guess got a Wheatland Regional Corporation. We had hired our Harriman to, Gregory Harriman, to help preparing a budget. They've put that off until they've received an audited financial statement. So I don't know what the future of that is yet either, but they want more clarity, I guess. Nothing else? I'll move my report. All in favor? Carried. And Deputy Reeves' report?
My report is again rather brief. Most of the information's online. Any questions about anything I've been at? Calgary Metropolitan Board, we had this first servicing committee meeting. Very general talking about that. The second one is on Thursday. So. Carsland Town Hall meeting, I went with Donna, talked about all the upgrades down there, and it went really good. Staff did an excellent job. And ASB, we still have to define what farmland is.
Any questions? You move your report, Scott?
I move my report.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Division 1, Councillor report. Not here. I don't think he has one. We will move that. I meant to say Division 2 Councillor report.
My report's in the package. The only notes I wanted to make were, I believe Alan may have already received or will be receiving an update on the revised funding agreement amount owing for WFCSS. The CAO said she would forward something to the county.
Yeah, it's just follow up on that, Mr. Chairman. There was an invoice sent out from the WFSS CAO. Actually, she handed it to me back in January, and the additional amount I didn't support, or wasn't the motion of council to support that at the time. So the base amount of $55,000 was paid back in January, February, sometime in there. The additional amount, I have not received an updated invoice yet, but I'm assured that I'll receive that in the next week or so.
Okay.
So it'll go on the next check run, just so you know.
Okay.
And then the only other note was council had inquired whether we should look at increasing the yearly funding to WFCS on an ongoing basis. And so I took that to the board and we discussed it. The board didn't feel that that was a good idea, just because they don't, it's not consistently every year that WFCSS is asking for an increased amount. So if they decided that they would just leave it at the amount as it currently is, and then if there are needs with certain budget years to have increased asks, we'll just bring those to council with some rationale. If nobody has any questions, I'll move that my report be accepted as presented.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Division 3 Councillor report.
The Economic Development Speaker Series, that'll be coming to for RDF or RFD to council on the Roger Brooks. There's also signage that's going to be coming into council through that. They had a Speargrass spring meeting. Everybody was very, very pleased that they heard that the lights would be installed at the entrance. Very in love with the county right now. That's good. And the handy bus, as their new bus should be here in about 6 to 8 weeks.
Move your report.
I move my report is read.
Is there any questions for Donna? All in favor? Carried. And Division 4 Councillor report.
Sorry? Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. I think the only thing I want to touch on is the CMRB land use. We are, I believe the biggest thing is, as Scott mentioned, is what is ag land going forward. I think we have to, in my opinion, I think we should be pushing for the least amount of definition. Like I personally, I'm leaning towards sort of the definition or what we want to do with future ag land is make sure we don't have any premature development of ag land. I think it's probably, and I believe that is probably the way it is stated in the or on the municipal level. So we got, and I'm open for if you guys think I'm way out of line here, that I'm open for discussion on what is ag land. What I really worry about is that we become basically a holding space for Calgary to and just take over the ag land. They just wanted green space so that they don't have to spend a lot of money to redevelop it. And the other part of my deal is we're at myself, Ben, and Jason were at Mistakis Institute, which is the least conflict in Brooks, And I think it's going to be, there's a link there for the data map. And it's a great concept. Right now, the way it's laid out right now, I'm not sure it works out that good because it'll be interesting to see how they weight the weight the categories, because right now, the areas that they're saying not to put, is all north of Brooks itself, because native prairie land has been, everybody loves native prairie land evidently, so we don't want to see any division of that, and there's a lot of native prairie land out there. So it will be interesting to see this going forward, where this is, how this all works out, in fact, so whether the exercise was worth doing or not. So so that's my report, and I ask it be moved.
Okay, moved it. Any questions?
Just a comment to what Tom was saying. Yeah, Brooks doesn't get any, and it all goes out into the northeast corner of the county. So it depends on what their weighting system is and how this all comes through for setbacks and everything else from the different. So I have my doubts, but
one thing about if you get a chance to look at it, is like there's a lot of information out there. Like the irrigation systems are all put into this. It's absolutely amazing what is being done and all the different all the different the historical sites and all that kind of stuff. So it's worth your time.
I brought it up, but can you show it to me at lunch?
Okay, any other questions? All in favor? Carried. And Division 7, Councillor report.
yeah, my report is on the server. The only thing I would add to that is I've got a request from our administrator. I'll just read it. Our last board meeting, we were looking at submitting an application to FCM for the climate change staffing grant program. The deadline for that is the 29th of June. She requires a letter from a supporting municipal partner to demonstrate council motion of support for the application, or a letter from our CAO specifying the same. And I just asked Alan if we had room for that, and he said, yeah, there was not a. So my question would be to council if they would be willing to support that. She has to have this in by the 29th, just to see if we meet the criteria to apply for the grant. That has to be by the 29th, and then it goes into a queue, and they decide from there if you're even eligible to apply for the grant. But we need a supporting municipality to go forward with it. So my motion would be that Wheatland County be the supporting municipality on the application to see if we're eligible.
That's your motion, Ben?
For the grant, yeah.
Are there any questions? All in favor? Carried.
Thank you for that. And just a comment I got this morning in my mailbox, I told you that we had a meeting with Joe Cece, our finance minister over Sewa, and we weren't sure whether he was paying attention, but he did send me a note and said, thank you for showing your project hopes with me, sharing your project. Sincerely, Joe. So maybe he was listening. We'll see.
Okay.
But if there's no question, I'll move my report.
Any questions for Ben? All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Staff report, CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report is included in the package. I have a couple items that I would like to just kind of further discuss. Joint Health and Safety Committee meeting on May 24th. We continue to work on the new form for emergency drills, hearing protection, and the monitoring of staff hearing, where they're at and if any changes happen. Updating in regards to the new OH&S and WCB requirements is ongoing, as well as safety daily checks and feedback. And our staff have begun our internal safety audit. That's an annual audit that we need to do. So it's internal for 2 years, and then the third year it's an external audit by other municipalities. So this is the first internal audit. Next year will be another internal audit, and then 2020 will be the external audit. So that's an update there. And I did send an email out. The timing on one of the councillors was perfect on the DRP. I made the inquiry. The letter was received, and I did send that out. And I know that there would maybe council wanted to discuss that letter, either as part of my report or after my report. It's up to you folks in regards to how you want to discuss that. I understand that our application for the MWAP, which is the municipal component, may get approved to the minister. It's not a guarantee, but that's what I was told. It looks fairly favorable for that. As you know, Cypress County and a couple other counties did receive some funding through the MWAP program, but so far there's been no DRP funding for the fires. So we are making an application, or we have expressed our intent to apply for DRP funding for the floods this spring, and I think that might be considered more favorably because that's why that program was set up. So I'll turn it over to any of the councillors that want to talk about the DRP.
Any questions? Amber?
I was just wondering, I understand that the application was denied. Is there an appeal process for that?
To the best of my knowledge, there's no formal appeal process. I suggest if council wants to express, another letter could be sent to the minister expressing their disappointment, I guess, that the DRP application was denied. Perhaps, I don't know.
I just think given, like I know for sure one of the residents in Division 2, don't quote me on the amount, but they have, I believe she said approximately $50,000 in fencing that was like it was a non-insurable loss. And when you're talking in terms of economic feasibility for an egg producer, I think there's a case to be made that jeopardizes that when they have that type of like scale of non-insurable loss. So if we could send a letter, I would appreciate that. Just requesting like either an appeal or just for them to re-examine the application.
Would be appropriate because I think the gist of their letter was these losses are insurable, and as such they don't insure them, but a non-insurable loss is a different issue. Yeah, why don't you make a motion that we send a letter reminding them that fencing is a non-insurable loss, and fencing, we could include the price per mile. Well, that's easy for us to put in. And how many miles we've lost, is that appropriate? Or?
Yeah, I think we do have some numbers on that. Yeah. I think there was some water wells too, I believe, that they weren't insurable, if I remember correctly. Does that sound correct? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just fencing, but
that's right.
If we could reiterate those things. Exactly, absolutely. Okay. I'll move that we send a letter requesting a re-examination of the DRP application given the scale of the uninsurable losses.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor?
Before that, we just a friendly amendment to include in there that we're talking about the non-insurable issues, or are we talking about all of them?
All non-insurables.
Just the non-insurable ones, yeah, that's what
Okay, any other questions? All in favor? Carried. Go ahead, Ellen.
So that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman. I have a number of requests for decisions following that.
Okay. Any questions on the report? Motion to accept the report.
So moved.
Ben is moved. All in favor? Carried. Request for decision. We did that one. Request for decision, Strathmore RCMP detachment CompStat report.
So there was a request from one of the council members to have the CompStat report for Strathmore. I think you saw the one from Kevin Charles, Staff Sergeant for the Drumheller detachment. This is the Strathmore detachment CompStat report for the first 3 months, January, February, and March.
Any questions?
I'll move that we accept the January to March 2018 Strathmore RCMP detachment CompStat report as presented. And then if additionally, could you just inquire if they have a 2017 annual report? Because that was really interesting from Drumheller as well. And I wouldn't mind seeing that, especially in light of if we're trying to just look at some comparables between 2017 and 2018 for things like the.
Okay, so accepted as information, request the 2017 final report.
Yeah, thank you.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to add one thing under RCMP while we're talking about that. Working with Sergeant Delaron on the RCMP mapping, crime mapping. I think I mentioned it once before. I've also talked to Sergeant Charles from Drumheller Detachment, and he is on board as well. So we're working through the details on that. So we're hoping to have that up this summer. Once the RCMP go through that. So we'll be, I understand we'll be one of the second or third communities in Alberta. St. Albert was the first, that was the pilot project, seems to be going quite well there. So just for council's information, or just to refresh your memories, that would show where recent crimes have happened. Not specific locations, but it would be a dot on a map to show you. So then that helps the public understand, okay, there is crime going through the area. I know a lot of it's word of mouth. You know, there's a wave of crime goes through, or perhaps, or some break and enters, and people hear about it that way. But this might be a little bit faster to get out that information. So we're looking forward to seeing that happen probably in the next couple of months. So.
Oh, good.
On that, I talked to a fellow this weekend that had a meeting with that group that's out, and they said they will show up at the detachments and hand these guys reports, and these are fellows that they're watching, they're looking at, and they give them their, I'm not exactly sure how it all works, but according to this fellow, he said it's starting to work, and it's starting to show up on the criminal side. That they, so I think it's working.
Good.
I saw it firsthand last night. I was in the county of Vulcan, but we were on a gravel road, and this truck was just going at an enormous speed, going around a corner, and actually was heading for us at one time. So we pulled over. 5 cop cars behind it. Yeah, and they were. Somebody else had said that they saw them at a different location putting down spike belts. So, yeah, we're just lucky we didn't get hit.
Really? Okay. Okay, request for decision cancellation of the October 16th, 2018 council meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask council to consider cancellation of this meeting, and the purpose would be October 15th and 16th. I've signed up for a course through the ICD, which is the international. I can't remember what the definition is, but it's about nonprofit boards and how to operate nonprofit boards. Very well respected program. It's just 2 days, so I'll be attending that on the 15th and 16th. It's in Calgary.
Okay.
So there's no overnight stays or anything like that. So just if council would be considering cancel that one meeting if possible.
Okay. Tom? Okay, any questions? All in favor? Carried. Request for decisions, strategic plan priorities may update.
Chairman, I just have a brief PowerPoint. The information is in your package, then the request for decision. PowerPoint that Lisa put together for me. Lisa's not here today. She's actually not here this week. She's in Calgary at a public engagement courses, 2 courses. One's a 3-day and one's a 2-day. So public participation and engagement, and something that I talked to her a couple months ago. She's very eager to take it, so I'm looking forward to see what kind of results come back. So she put this together and sent it to me this morning, so it looks pretty good, I think. So just a May update on the strategic priorities. So this is the existing priorities, and you'll see in the package, then we're going to talk about the ones that came out of the service capacity review. Once you approve those, then we'll move forward on using those moving forward, if that makes any sense. So. So the 5 still on here: economic development, service capacity, municipal development plan, and crime prevention and dust control. So where we're at with that, economic development strategy, requests for proposal submissions were accepted. McSweeney was hired. Council made that motion. Thank you very much for that. And then we're hoping to meet with groups on June 12th. So council's been invited, Economic Development Board. That's a 12:30 start. There'll be lunch, I guess, for council and not before, but we've also invited Community Futures. They've confirmed the Strathmore Chamber of Commerce, Town of Strathmore, the 3 villages, I think there's a couple other ones that we invited as well, just to attend, so to get as many people as possible. That's kind of kickoff meeting to that. We're just finalizing the details. I think the agenda, excuse me, I did send out to everybody. We're just finalizing the details on another report that I've been working with McSweeney on, and hopefully we'll be able to get that sent out maybe later this week or the first part of next week. So that's kind of where that's at. We're still anticipating the completion of the project in October of 2018, and it'll come back to council, obviously, for council's endorsement or approval of that. So any questions on the economic development strategy? And then service capacity review, obviously that took place in May. And then, like I said, there's a follow-up report coming up next on the agenda in regards to that. Dust control, staff are still working on that, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that next week at the Committee of the Whole meeting on June 13th, just to make sure we're on the right track. We have increased the amount of dust control we're doing based on some of the feedback we've received for council and the traffic volumes. So there is a number of roads that we're doing additionally compared to before. So, and we're able to fit that into the budget without making too many drastic changes. So crime prevention, officers continue to patrol the county with a focus on back roads to be visible and deter criminal activities. We're also attending Crime Watch presentations and communicating with the public, and continue to try to do that as best we can. So any questions on any of those? And then the third one's municipal development plan, regional growth management strategy. As we can appreciate, working on the number of IDPs and ICFs. We had a meeting yesterday with the villages and Palliser in regards to the IDPs for the villages. Sounds like we're going to move with Brown and Associates, who's the consultant we use, because Palliser doesn't have the capacity to do that. Ross Verlesic is doing some work with Drumheller and Starland in that. So the only one we haven't really finalized is Drumheller, where they're at. So I'm continuing to try to work with Daryl and try to firm up where we're at with the IDP and ICFs there. We've had a preliminary discussion. Everyone else we've moving forward on. There'll be some terms of reference coming in regards to the villages, IDPs, and Rocky View counties, IDPs and ICFs. So that'll be coming back to council, just for your information, so that everybody's on the same page. So we're a little behind in this area, but I know staff are working on it as diligently as they can, amongst other things. So any questions on that one? This is just an update of capital projects, the 125 or so capital projects that we've got. As you can see, the pie keeps changing a little bit. We've got some that are inactive, meaning either they haven't started, or they completed one, or the other, or haven't. We haven't started the process, or they're not in any activity, so to speak. Design phase, as you can see, there's still about 33% are in design phase, and then construction is starting to ramp up. So our crews are out, and a lot of the other projects are starting to take place. So that's kind of where we're at with those. Our equipment purchases were pretty much completed on those. There's some bridge files and that show up in the tender purchase phase, but as far as equipment, I think most of it's been purchased. We purchased 2 scrapers this year, 627Ks, and they've been received, and actually I think one's out in the field working right now. So, and most of our, actually all of our summer staff, aside from a couple students, are all on staff now. So, and that's my report.
Any questions? Like a motion for this information for strategic priorities may update. Tom?
I'll move.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Request for decision, Service Capacity Review Report 2018.
Mr. Chairman, this is the report that was a result of the May 2nd, 3rd, 4th Service Capacity Review that Council participated in along with staff. I draw your attention to, and I apologize, I don't know what page it is in your package, but the summary page, it's page 10 in the report. I don't know what page it is in the package, probably in the 400-page range or something like that. It looks like this strategic priorities chart. So on there, based on what we heard from the service capacity review, The main now items would be economic development strategy, service capacity, Gleason School, dust control policy, and crime prevention. Obviously, the service capacity, once you guys approve this report, will drop off and another priority will move up. And that's kind of where we're at. So I am recommending that council approve this report and start with quarterly updates if council's okay with that rather than monthly, starting in September. My rationale behind that is that we're coming up to the summer season. So staff are going to be away a little bit. There's still going to be activity on that. If you still want to do a monthly, we could certainly do that. It just becomes a little more cumbersome to get updates. So if you're okay, I'm making the recommendation that the next report would be September 8, 2018. So
Council's wishes.
Just to note, I really appreciated this process. And I think like having this comprehensive list of services that we provide and the fact that we're looking at them and looking at what we're doing well, what we could, reduce or what we need to increase. And I think just the fact that we're consciously looking at this, I really appreciate it. And I think for communications with ratepayers, it really does help for them to know that there's rationale behind the decisions that are being made here. Because I think the number one thing I heard when I was campaigning is about the bureaucracy of the county. And I came in here thinking like, we're going to aim for efficiency. And I really appreciated Gord's quote. It's on page 320 of our package where it says efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things. And I think our council, I like our focus on like balancing both of those things. And I think I really appreciated the comprehensiveness of this report. So I just wanted to thank Alan and Gord for taking us through this process and then for having such a solid outcome of that process that we can follow up on. I like the quarterly because I think monthly it can get redundant because there's not always a lot of action. That's just some of my thoughts. But I really appreciate this, Alan, and it really does help me, like as part of council, do my job better. So I appreciate that.
yeah, thank you for that comment. And staff really appreciated the opportunity to engage. And as you may or may not know, the first day you guys weren't supposed to be there. It was supposed to just be staff. And I know I had a good conversation with Gord about that, but after he came to me and he said, I've never done it that way before, but he says with your council, you guys were very engaged and very respectful, so it worked out well. And I think it gave you guys a little bit more opportunity to participate, get in the wrong lane or whatever, however somebody says that, I can't remember how it goes, but and I appreciate your comments in that. I asked council, I guess, if you're comfortable with Gord, I've tentatively set him up for June 2019 to come back and do kind of a follow-up. And maybe we do it annually. Red Deer County does that, and so we're teaming up with Red Deer County. So I think it's 2 days, one with staff and one with council or something to that nature. And then he would go to Red Deer County right after that. So we would split the costs on travel in that. Okay. There is lots of people that do this. Gord's got a lot of experience, and he's one of those kind of people. I like the guy, but a lot of people don't like him. You either like him or you don't, right? So he's one of those kind of guys. So if you guys enjoyed that, I mean, we can bring him back. So. Sorry, I should have said enjoy.
Want to turn your mic on, Ben, please?
With the fire bylaw, all the information's been compiled, and it's just a matter of me sitting down with staff and going through and make sure we've answered all the questions or understand what the questions are. So it's been through our staff and it's been through legal. I just haven't had a chance to sit down with that. So we're aiming to bring it back July 3rd for council with all the feedback.
Okay, because I'm going to a meeting tonight.
So the existing agreements still stay in place. Okay, there's no changes whatsoever. And I'm pleased to indicate that, and I've heard this from not just our staff, but the firefighters, that a number of the associations are working on their SOPs, is it? Standard Operating Procedures, and that's been some hesitance in the past. So I think that that's a great thing, and I think it'll help all of us down the road. So I've heard, some great things from the firefighters, the frontline people, that they feel that they're being listened to, because that's one of the complaints that we've heard over the last few years, is they feel, one or two people are dictating and they're not following OH&S rules and things like that. So, and we're ultimately responsible too, right? So.
I'll move that council approves the service capacity review report as attached to this request for decision, and further to instruct administration to provide quarterly updates starting in September 2018 in regards to the revised strategic priorities chart on page 10 of the report.
Okay. Any questions? So just while we're on it, the chart, the strategic chart, it'll become the most prominent thing that'll be listed with our other chart?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. So that'll replace the one we have currently. Obviously, the service capacity review is now completed for this year.
Right.
We'll move up. I think that I believe the ag one was the next priority that council had identified before.
There was the Gleason.
Pardon me?
Number 3 was the Gleason School and the
Yeah,
next one after.
so what ends up happening is service capacity now would drop off once this is approved.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one would come up would be likely the ag strategy, because I think we had a good discussion on that. So the utility cost recovery obviously is coming up later in this agenda, so there'll be some discussion on that. So
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciated the opportunity to work with staff that first meeting too. I thought it was a good meeting.
no, and they really appreciate it too. They came to me and said they really enjoyed it. They were nervous at first, but yeah, some of you can be pretty intimidating.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Request for decision, part-time occupational health and safety officer. Page 342.
So there's nothing part-time about that.
Pardon?
I said there's nothing part-time about that.
Yeah, so currently we have a full-time health and safety officer, and as I'm sure council knows by now, I'm very big on health and safety, and so currently our full-time health and safety officer is struggling to keep up with the day-to-day stuff. So this would be a 3-day-a-week, maximum 24 hours a week, and funded through the current 2018 budget. So we do have budget funding in there. We've allocated some funding to labor, and we're just going to reallocate some funding from equipment purchase and some other areas. So it's not going to affect the budget. It's not going to affect our operations, but it's going to make us more effective out in the field operating with the staff over the summer and that. So keeping in mind this position, once we get through the process, probably won't be in place till July anyway. So it's only going to be 5 months of the year this year. So, okay.
Okay.
It'll be ongoing, yes. No, it's not going to get easier, no.
Question, on your report, or the key issues, it's meet ongoing service requirements to county ratepayers. What does that entail?
Well, I guess that what that means is we're trying to provide the best service we can for the county ratepayers, and believe it or not, to ensure that our employees are working safely does provide that in our estimations.
Okay. Has there been any, I hate hiring people because this is going to be a full-time job and it's going to be, has there been any look, I feel more comfortable if we could find somebody that, like an independent contractor that we could hire to do whatever this job is. In the fact that, because now we're going to, everything just sort of mushrooms, right? We're sort of hiring them for life, for lack of a better term. And I'm sometimes thinking that I don't want to be responsible for their benefits and all this kind of stuff, right? Like, and I'm just wondering, has there been any look? There might not be, but is there a company out there that would do this kind of work on a contract basis?
Yeah, most certainly. There is a number of companies out there. So what we've done over the last 2 years is we've had other crew members, like other full-time employees, do this as a supplement to their job. So we had for about a year, one of our truck drivers did this as a part-time job. And then one of our water treatment plant operators did this as a part-time. So they kind of volunteered. But we're running out of volunteers for one thing, and running out of the capacity in-house to do this. So we do have one current full-time OH&S officer. Okay, and you've met her, Maggie. And she's staying on. That's not changing, right? This would just supplement that. As far as contracting out, yes, we can do that. The contracting out per hour is a little bit more costly because we're looking at probably in the range of $25 an hour with benefits. To contract it out, we're probably looking in the neighborhood of $125 to $130 an hour. More effective, more efficient, because they have more knowledge, obviously, than somebody internally starting out would have, so they can probably do things a little bit quicker. But the costs, we could certainly bring back some information on the costs if you like. That's not a problem.
This is my bugaboo. It's not anybody else's, but I just like it being clean. And, you know, like, I just don't like, you never know where this is gonna lead to, right? Like, it becomes a full-time job, then it doesn't become a full-time job at $120,000 an hour. I don't think it'll do that, but I struggle every day with trying to figure out how we do our job and do it most cost effectively. And sometimes spending more money per hour but getting more work is a better way to go.
We've tried contracting, and I agree. I think the staffing is better, that they're available when you want them to be available. And especially in safety, if there's an incident, that contractor might not be available. Or I don't know if it's this person would be just part-time, but we contracted someone to do this for our company, but we wanted them to teach our staff, because the staff understand, you know, what's more important for our business than that contractor does. And it was a lot more money to hire him than it was for the staff member.
Any other thoughts? What you're really asking for, Tom, is what I'm thinking. We've already got an employee. Instead of hiring a part-time one, maybe give that employee, we should search out if that employee could access a contracted outfit to give advice, to help out in times of need, or just to give us some prices on that mode of going instead of hiring somebody else, so you have a comparison.
Sort of struggling with this, because I understand where Donna's coming from, and it makes sense, and I understand where Alan's coming from. And I just don't, maybe we don't have, if we don't have to put this into a locked-in cage, so that we can, if we have something else that comes up down the road that needs a part-time employee, then this person could do both jobs. And I'm not sure how much knowledge you need, like, is it, if it's filing and all that kind of stuff, as opposed to getting into the meat of what health and safety is all about. Like, so I'm just trying to look for the best bang for the buck, and, you know, I can see going this way, and I'm not horribly against it. It's just that I just don't want to start making building kingdoms here.
Okay, so you're more interested in not so much the health and safety, but on the processes we use as a county to get bigger, to hire more people, or to get our work done. Yes. That process you're more interested in. If we should be contracting out versus, or whatever's other options. Yes. Maybe other options would be better.
Mr. Chairman, I can offer that if council is supportive of this, we can bring back a cost analysis on both perspectives. Because you certainly are, you're 100% right, Tom. My experience, your experience has taught us that if we hire a qualified professional in that area, sure, it might cost us $120 an hour compared to 25 or 30 or whatever, but you're going to get more efficiency out of that. There's no doubt about that. I'm not going to disagree with you that, because you're 100% on the mark. So that's not compared in here, so we can bring that information back if that's council's wishes. Just give us the direction and we'll do that.
Is that council's wishes? Amber?
Just further to that, my inkling is in this situation that probably the staff member will be a more efficient way to do it, given that we have Maggie already in that full-time position and the extensiveness of the training she's done, and that this would be more like as an adjunct to assist her. But I wouldn't even mind, just with future positions, when you bring the position, if you could bring some background just on cost comparison for future positions, and then we have that rationale in our decision-making when we go to look at these. And sometimes it might be best, I agree with you, I like the idea of looking at contractors for certain positions and just weighing the pros and cons of both, so.
Yeah, so just for council's information, and Ben and Glenn know this for sure, we always do a business case. So we don't always present that to council, but it's available, so I can certainly bring that back.
We have time to bring it back next meeting and you'd still meet your timelines?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you know, although this is very important, obviously, we're going to be, like I say, into July before we'll be able to hire for this position anyway. And now is our busy time. We're in it already, so we're partway in. So I think to do it right and have council comfortable with whatever decisions made, I'd have no qualms about bringing that information back for sure.
Just a comment. I understand where Tom's coming from, but I also know that if you contract somebody to do something and you don't like what they're doing, you're stuck with them for a while. And in this field, I think we're better off having somebody in-house looking after this than we do having someone coming from outside. I think it's more personalized and more compassionate than what we would get from a contractor.
Okay. Any other comments?
I would agree with Ben. Because I've worked with contracted guys before, and in-house, there's more level of caring and understanding of the operation, and the costs of somebody's idea of what they should do to make a name for themselves can cost a lot of money, and a lot of staff disappointment, and a lot of structure of operational changes. Whereas I don't think in any way, shape, or form our staff are doing anything wrong. I think there's just more catching up to speed on things, and I believe they're doing that. And I know Maggie's doing a great job. I do know one of the staff members that was helping her out previously, and I know the amount of work that was done and the training that was provided and stuff, and it's invaluable for the operation.
I don't think I got a motion, do I? Anywhere or another? Wishes?
Tom, would you be comfortable for this position going ahead with the proposal, or would you like to see the case for this one?
This top-heavy monster that we're already difficult to deal with now.
Okay.
This is my concern.
Go ahead.
To my understanding, I believe us only having one person in this department is rather small for the amount of employees that we have right now. Like, honestly, I'm sure we could do a survey of other communities, but I'm sure we have very small staff levels in regards to it. But
So, Mr. Chairman,
that's the way things are going. I would.
We have at 12 o'clock.
Yeah, well, it's not quite 12 o'clock, Mr. Chairman, but in the future, I will ensure, because that's my telling the staff,
That's right.
do the business plan, we go through it, but I haven't included it, but in the future, I will make sure it's included, Mr. Chairman, on any new positions, for sure.
I'll move the recommended action.
Ben's moved. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, we can go one more yet. Request for decision, County Regional Infrastructure Services Program, CRISP, reporting letters. I think there was two.
Yes,
Motion to
Mr.
accept
Chairman,
is-
so there's two received. The checks will be produced after this. So I think the only one outstanding is Drumheller. And again, I'm trying to communicate with Darrell there, and I know he's a busy man and he's been away a little bit. So I'll continue to endeavor to find out where they're at with their letter in regards to this and a number of other matters. But we would entertain the council consider this request for decision for approval today.
Okay. Ben has moved. Any questions? All in favor? Carried.
I'm going to turn it over to Mac for the presentation.
Yeah. Good late morning or good noon.
Yes.
Your Worship and Council. Today we're in front of Council for a very important presentation to one of our peace officers who is receiving, just like our two other peace officers received the the Alberta Emergency Services Medal for 12 years of service to Albertans, and more specifically part of his career here in Wheatland County. So if the medal, do we have the medal here? We have the medal here? Margaret had it. Margaret had it, yes. Okay. I do have a ribbon. So I don't have the actual medal.
Okay.
But I will give the ribbon, the undress ribbon, to the Reeve to present to Peace Officer. Come on up. Okay.
Congratulations, what more can I say? Thank you. Thanks for your service.
Over here?
It should be over there in front of our sign. We got a little sign over there. Thank you. Thank you.
Fetch that medal for you. I have another. Yeah. So I have more for you.
Okay, I'll just.
So on Sunday, May 27th, it was my privilege and absolute honor to be present at the annual investiture of the Fire Service Exemplary Service Medals held in Edmonton at a ceremony where Lieutenant Governor Lois E. Mitchell awarded the service medals to 21 of our county firefighters. The medal, established in 1984 to be awarded to full-time and volunteer firefighter or members of the Canadian Fire Service for outstanding service in the high-risk profession of firefighting. This is not a medal, as I put it, for breathing with the intent to live. It is not a medal which is simply represents putting in time. This prestigious medal is only awarded to those individuals whose long service and good conduct has been above reproach. They have served their country, their communities, their neighbors and friends in a stellar manner. Your Worship and Council, we should be very proud of the 21 of our longest serving firefighters in Wheatland County who distinguished themselves to this degree, and they received long overdue recognition. And I hope you'll join me in a heartfelt congratulations and fully appreciate the work well done by those individuals. I believe that in your packages you were given a list of the firefighters? Yes. Okay. And 5 of our firefighters were actually present for that award ceremony. Regional Fire Chief Judy Unsworth received her 20-year medal. Philip Fobian from Standard received his 20 years, 30 years, and 40 years service. Mark Hellman, retired from Carsland, received his 20 and 30-year bar. Corey Fisher, a captain in Hussar, received his 20-year medal. And Curtis Peterson was there from Rockeford Fire, who also received his 20-year medal. And representing the Zachariason family, Richard Zachariason received his medal posthumously for his 20 and 30 years service bar. It's very awesome. Do we have that PowerPoint? Yeah.
I have a question. Is there been recognition that this council sent? This council sent was a letter of, it's nice for the province to recognize them. We should recognize them too, shouldn't we?
We did thank them officially at the awards ceremony, firefighters banquet. Judy can speak to that.
But I'm thinking something from council, a letter of recognition from council, congratulating them.
So it was very humbling, Mayor and Council, to be there with the Lieutenant Governor, and the Minister of Municipal Affairs was also there. We had 5 of the 21 represented, and the others, we're asking for those medals to be brought to us, and we'd really like them to be presented with council. So the Council of Rockford and Standard and Hussar may decide to present theirs specifically to theirs, but for everyone else, it's really critical, because this is a medal given on behalf of the Queen, that it be done with council and probably the MP if we can organize it, if that would work. I'm going to send them congratulations on behalf of the fire services. This is really unusual, and they hadn't been recognized for so many years. So Mac did a phenomenal job on catching us up, and I can do that, but it would be very appropriate if council should choose to put something in writing congratulating them on behalf of this municipality, which is where most of them have done their work. So that.
And just a note, I don't think the list was in our package, but I'd love to have a copy of it.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to put a motion on the floor that council recognize these individuals in a letter signed by our Reeve. Send it out to each one of them individually.
Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you.